Welcome to another episode of In the Nude. Today we're going to continue talking about kind of the same concept as last week, the two truths and a lie that exist in some things when it has to do with power of positive thinking, but mindset shifts and manifestations and all of that, how it works. We have heard a number of people at this point on the internet talking about what you think about and how it pulls into your person and thinking positive, but what does that actually look like, and how do you practically apply it to your life, and what does that have to do with healing and all of that? Okay, we talked about the power of positive thinking and how if you don't want to continue to get the things you don't want, then you have to shift from focusing on what you don't want, right? You have to focus on the things you do want. The more time you can spend on thinking about the things in your life that you like, that's where your focus is, and that's what you see more of. Kind of like when you have that car that you bought that didn't really matter before, but then you own it and then you see it everywhere. It's a part of your brain, the reticular activating system, that actively sees that now because your brain has decided this is important. In that same way, if we do that with the things that we want in life, the things that we desire, we actively start seeing them more, and it perpetuates our cycle of what we believe and what we think in our life. But something that matters in that process is the journey that we're on and the things that we go through that we often feel like, hey, why is this happening to me? I don't understand. It isn't because you have to gain new abilities. You don't have to change. You are an amazing, powerful, uniquely gifted person. You don't have to become something different to get that life that you want. It isn't abilities that this journey of having to forge through difficulties and change mentalities and drop off coping, it's not about getting different abilities. It's about gaining the ability to see that you're already that person, to gain the ability to receive it. Most of us who've gone through trauma and have been treated in ways that are loving and have sat there and we have self-worth problems, right? We see somebody not treating us how we want to be loved. We see somebody not spending time with us, or a parent who just decided something else was more important. We see that as something that is innately our worth. They didn't love us like that because there was something wrong here. It's how a child's brain works. They have to take responsibility. They have to make it make sense in this tangible way. And so often when another person treats us a certain way, we, whether we want to or not, take it in as a part of who we are. To get that life, those achievements, that job, that relationship, that whatever it is that you're going towards and that thrive, that thing that you want, we have to be the person who we actually believe is worthy of it. That's the actual journey that we're on. We don't have to have all of this time, all of this space, all these things we have to live through. We don't have to gain abilities. We just have to gain the ability to see the truth that already is. You are worth the love. You are worth the energy, the effort. You are worth someone showing up and doing something extravagant and difficult simply because you desire it. You are that person. And it is often the case that because of what we've lived through, we can't quite believe it. And we're looking for other people to show it to us. We're wanting that person to come into our life, that family feeling, that belonging, that safety. And it's fair that we want it. It's fair that we look out in the world for it, right? Because that's what we're trained to do. That's what media says. That's what, romantic comedies say. That's what children just innately feel and know that they should have connection, right? But when you've lived through the brokenness that isn't that, we often have to be that first person for ourselves, which isn't fair. It's not fun. It's really, really, really would be nice to have someone come in and do what should have been. To be that person that shows you unconditional love and shows you that you deserve all of those things. But shoulds, coulds, woulds, they don't change our life the way that we want our life to change. So placing aside what we think should happen or could have happened and facing what is, we are the people who show up. We, for ourselves, are the people who are going to pick up the mantle. to prove that you know you're worth love. You know you're worth effort. And how you prove that to yourself is showing up for yourself. How you prove that and gain the ability to see that you're already worth it is in the process of learning to discover yourself and learning how to show up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Because self-love isn't all the, zhuzhy things. It's deciding, hey, I really want to be more healthy. And then sitting there when you have the choice between something that's not going towards what you want, healthiness, whatever that level is for you, and something that you would have done before, you say, okay, I'm going to have to say no to myself right now because I'm saying yes to what my future self wants. It's doing the uncomfortable thing of getting up a little bit earlier to do the thing that makes you feel better about the day. It's the uncomfortable thing of taking the shower when you don't want to, right? So we go through this process of choosing all these tiny, minute things in our life to show up for ourselves, to love ourselves, to prove day in and day out that we are a person worth love. We slowly but surely gain the ability to see the truth that's always existed, that we can't feel. Like we can know it up here. It takes a long time. People don't talk about it. It takes a long time between understanding something and embodying it, at least for me. I have this disconnect where I'll understand the concept, I'm worthy of love. I understand the concept. Just because someone treated me that way doesn't mean that has anything to do with my value. It has more to do with how they view themselves. It has more to do with what they're going on in their life, right? I can understand that up here mentally, past, like it's the 2 + 2 = 4. I got that concept, but owning it and embodying it, like metabolizing it into my actual person, that process is a long process for me. Maybe for you not, and high five if that's the case. But it's doing the continuous work of living off of the truth of 2 + 2 = 4, even when you can't embody it, that you slowly but surely metabolize it into your person. And when you start doing that, and you focus on the things in your life that you want more of, and you focus and you start deciding to look at and view things in a light that you want, right? So say, for example, you want to have more income. It's choosing right now to somehow be grateful for whatever it is you have. You have a car. It may be broken down. It may not run, but you have a car that has 4 wheels, right? It's paid for, right? It's choosing to decide to focus on what you want more of, right? You may not have a lot of money in your bank account, but it's not a zero, right? It's those tiny shifts. And when you make those tiny shifts of what you're focused on, while you are metabolizing the idea that you're worth love because you're showing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's difficult, when you're showing up for yourself and saying, you know what, I'm tired. I'm not going to hustle today. My body is telling me I need to rest. I'm going to do that, even though it doesn't make sense. When we take the time to listen to ourselves, to follow our curiosities, sometimes we have these things that we don't understand. Like if you get really interested in how light functions and you're like, it's a waste of time. Maybe how light functions, or whatever it is for you, is going to you following it, looking it up and figuring that information, seeing it. There's a reason you have that gut level curiosity at it. There's a reason you have an interest in whatever it is that you right now are like desperately wanting to know more information about or desire to do. There's a reason for it. When we quelch our, I need to use the restroom but it's too busy, it's not a thing. When we quelch our innate desire and curiosity for what we're going after, we're suppressing a natural flow part of us. But when we take the time to decide to show up for ourselves, take that shower when we don't want to, when we decide to show up for ourselves and decide to rest, even though we have pressure that makes us feel like we shouldn't rest, and we tell ourselves in the moment, it's okay. Resting is productive. And we allow ourselves to actually exist for however long we can in that rest. When we decide to take the 20 minutes and watch a video on how light functions because we had curiosity, when we do those things, we're slowly in tiny, tiny, minute ways proving to ourselves that we can have the ability to see the truth that already exists, that you're worth love, and when we can see that ability, that we can understand and conceptualize that we're worth the energy and effort of love, then we have at that point the ability to receive everything that's intended for us. Because if someone was going to give you a great gift, but you don't feel like you're ready to receive, how about this? Okay, you've been given a compliment before, right? And you know that like, oh, you're like, your stomach almost like clenches, like almost queasy, where you're like, oh, I don't know how to process that. Like, somebody just gave me a compliment and I feel a little bit like I want to deflect it. I'll be like, oh yeah, you too. Or, you know, that feeling. It's that same way, that same feeling of like where you get that uncomfortable and you don't know how to receive it. That's true with everything you want in life. If you're in that place of queasy, oh, I can't, you're not going to be able to receive it. You're not going to be able to get more of it. So if you want to have those things in your life, you have to get to a place of actually being able to receive them. So let's talk about practical ways to make shifts so you can. I've already mentioned kind of in passing some of them, but some of the things that have helped me is when I find myself having a whole bunch of feelings that are indicators of where I am and what my focus is. After I've processed the feelings, again, there's a past episode all about processing feelings, and it's really, really important not to just put a sticker over them saying, oh yeah, I feel great. You don't have to feel great. You can feel crappy, and it's okay. But process it, and at what point you've decided, you know what, I don't want to feel this way anymore. After you've processed it, you can move into different things, okay? Different things that have helped me. Writing down things that I see around me that I like. I like the way that the sun hits the shed in my backyard. How it dances on the leaves and creates this shade on it that's this like almost pretty black and white photo that I can see in my head but isn't printed. I like the fact that I have a yard, that I have the responsibility and the privilege to be able to mow, that my kids can play in. I have a house that has a roof that my kids can stay in. I start seeing the things around me that I like in my life. It isn't that everything's pretty. It isn't trying to ignore all of the things you want to adjust. It's taking the time to physically write out and think about and focus in on the things you do like. Because then you start seeing more of the things that you do like that car that you own and that you see everywhere. That's what we're trying to do, right? So looking around and actively seeing it, saying it out loud, so you're both vocalizing it and hearing it. That helps your brain. Sitting down at the end of the day and writing down the things that you loved about the day. Like 5 things that you thought went well. Even if it's something as silly as, I brushed my teeth. That's a win for today, right? It doesn't matter how silly it is. Whatever 5 wins you can. And then one thing that you'd like to adjust, right? It's okay to keep in mind things you want to change and adjust, because if you're trying to continuously resist that, it's not going to help. But if you can physically write down things you're grateful for, things you liked about the day, the mechanism in your hand of writing out and thinking through actively helps your brain remember it. So vocalizing and hearing it, writing it and thinking it, those 2 things cement things back into your brain further, right? Those are things that help me. For me, listening to music that helps me want to sing or helps me want to dance, that helps elevate my mood and gives me more dopamine, allows me to have the higher energy frequency that I want to have, right? Now, I don't do that when I'm feeling sad. I don't try to force myself there. But when I'm trying to start off the day, or if I'm trying to incentivize myself to do something I don't necessarily want to do, like clean, right? Sometimes the house is a mess and I don't want to clean. If I put on a song and I decide to make it a game where I'm going to dance around and try to sing and have fun with it, somehow the thing I didn't want to do can be a thing that I do want to do and have fun with. Choosing to take the time on a day to sit down and think about how I've changed in tiny ways or big ways. Think about me 6 months ago. Think about me a year ago. Think about me 4 years ago. And acknowledge and congratulate myself on the tiny changes that I've done. Because sometimes it can be so defeating to see the gap of where we haven't finished, what we haven't gotten to, what we want to have achieved. And if we focus on that gap, the gap just gets bigger, and that's where our attention is. But if we look back and we see, hey, you know what? I used to struggle quite a bit with internal bullying, like all of the time. And now it's just infrequent. That's a huge win. And if you take the time to look back and see those wins in your life, it can encourage you to keep doing the day-to-day work, right? Self-compassion is one of the biggest like baseline factors that exist in every aspect of healing. There's a lot of things in healing that are like not one size fits all is not healing. That's not how this works. And it's not a formula, right? It's not 1 + 1 = 2 and 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. And if it was, everybody would do it and everybody would do it faster. It's a science experiment of crazy. It's like spelling. Half the time the rules people put out don't make sense and don't work for other people, even though it seems like a mainstay thing. It's frustrating in its like chaotic nature of individualness. It's a crazy experience of trying to get to know who you are and what you need and what your process is. But it also can be a very beautiful experience, kind of like getting to know and having a relationship with somebody, right? That beginning portion where you're like butterflies and all. It's all about how you view the perspective. But if you can come to the table, one baseline that I have found exorbitantly true in everybody's journey is if you can come to the table of the experience of healing with compassion for yourself. If you can come to the table with understanding, man, it's completely reasonable that you're defeated. It's completely reasonable that you keep getting challenged with the same thing. It's totally understandable that you keep hitting your head on the wall of this. And not in an intellectual way where you're like trying to like excuse things or say, well, of course. It's in a compassionate way like you would with a friend. No wonder you struggle with having this life that you want, because you don't see that you're worthy of love. You don't see it because you haven't experienced it from somebody else. No wonder you struggle with showing that love to yourself because you've never had it modeled. No wonder you feel like everything's rolling uphill because you're the person who's having to forge the mountain for the first time. It's coming to the table with compassion. It's coming to the table with curiosity. It's coming to the table with grace for yourself. And it's hard. It's hard to come to the table for the first time. It's like you're coming to a table that didn't exist, having to forge the table, sit at the table, and mind the table, cook the dinner all at the same time. It can be extremely overwhelming. The work and the overwhelm and the things that you're doing in this is the most beautiful gift that you can give to yourself. It's showing right now that you already love yourself and know you're worthy of love, even if you can't say those words. You wanting to love yourself proves that to yourself, because when you get angry when somebody mistreats you, that's proof that you know that treatment wasn't okay. The fact that you're striving to have a different life means you know you're worth a different life. The process is a complicated, messy thing, but the process can also be beautiful. And I love that you already know you're worthy, even if you can't accept it yet.